So here you can see a beautiful colored field poppy with a brilliant color. He didn't care if a flower was considered a weed. He used many flowers that people considered weeds. He did not care. What he cared about was the vibrant color. So here we've got a unique combination of very cultivated, voluptuous double tulip and very simple forget-me-nots and simple pansies, combining the very complex and the exotic with the simple and coming up with a beautiful combination. So here we're looking down the Grande Allée again, this time from the front door. Now, Impressionist paintings were known for their brightness, using small brush strokes to reproduce reflected light. They produce a sensation of sparkling called Impressionist shimmer. In a painting Monet did in 1873 called Corn Poppies, the whole painting sparkles from the brilliant red-orange color. But also there's little specks of white in the meadow grasses. And here in the garden, what Monet would do is use little whites in order to provide shimmer in the garden. This is dianthus. There's some white blooms and also silvery foliage. He would often use white, airy flowers in order to get that shimmering effect in the garden, because white can make solid colors look brighter, make them vibrant and sparkle. He avoided a big mass of white, such as a mop head hydrangea or an azalea or a rhododendron. Since so much white, it has a white hot effect and makes a hole in the garden. He wanted the individual flowers to be seen through, so we used little airy whites in order to get that sparkle in the garden. Here you can get an idea of the sparkle, of the Impressionist shimmer, from very light colored flower heads here. See how it lightens this whole plant band. But there's other ways to get Impressionist shimmer. Please ignore me in the photo. I couldn't successfully Photoshop myself out, but notice the beautiful rose standard, which Monet used near the ends of each arch down the Grande Allée and matched the house. But what I really want you to see is this pink poppy here to the left. It's translucent like a Chinese lantern. That's another way to get Impressionist shimmer in the garden. So Monet really liked to use single-petaled flowers because the light would shine through them and give the twinkling appearance to the garden. So here you can see more translucent. See this orange gladiolus blooms with the sun shining through. Up here it's cosmos, pink cosmos, and see how it seems to twinkle, as opposed to these dahlias, which are double and dark colored. That doesn't mean Monet did not like to use doubles. He did. He loved the dahlias, but he very much liked the single petaled flowers because of what the light would do with them. Also, he liked iridescent flowers. See, these tulips are single petaled, but they're not see-through at all. They're not translucent at all, but they're iridescent. You see, they have a satin sheen to them. And so look at the shimmer that they provide. I look at this and I see like reflections on water, but Monet could see the reflections on the petals of flowers. Here's more poppies. He loved bicolored flowers since they represented two strokes of the brush. Another example of that is bearded iris. They often have two colors. He had an entire bearded iris collection, and they also provide a great deal of shimmer in the garden. He liked lace. He had lace curtains in his house. So here in the spring, this is before the blooms have come, but you can see on these trellises over the paint box beds, he would use white and pink clematis on these trellises, also climbing roses and wisteria. But when you are under these trellises and they're in bloom, it's like looking through the rest of the garden through pink lace curtains. He loved blue flowers, and especially, see this Blue flowers down here in the shade. He loved to use blue flowers in shade because shaded light is cool light and it enhances blue colors. So he would often plant blue flowers in a pool under a tree so they'd be enhanced by the shade from the tree. The darker flowers that he used, he'd often like to use them as a little dotted stipple effect of pinpricks of shadow, because if you have the sparkle, you also have to have a little shadow. Monet did a painting in 1902 of his Grand Allée, which shows pinpricks of shade if you look very closely. And in the garden, that was represented by flowers like these violas. His 1902 painting shows a great deal more shade than the pinpricks of shade that you see here. That is because the Grand Allée was bordered by spruce trees, which Alice really wanted to keep. They had taken out cypress trees down the Grand Allée when they first came, but she couldn't bear to cut down have the spruce trees cut down as well. So even though Monet complained bitterly that they would ruin his plantings of flowers, the spruce trees remained, but they limbed them up and up in order to get more sun for the flowers, and then finally they topped them to half size, and they became poles for the climbing roses, and they eventually rotted, but they were only taken down quite long after Alice died. But that's why his famous 1902 painting of the Grand Allée shows a great deal more shade than you will see in the garden today. So by 1890, Monet's painting sales had improved, and he bought the farmhouse and the Clos-Normand. What did he do in the next few years? Now that some prosperity had arrived, he marries Alice, walks his stepdaughter down the aisle, and hired 6 gardeners and built 2 greenhouses. You can see one of the greenhouses here. A bit later, he built himself a new studio. I think the priorities were really very clear: family, house and garden, and painting. There's a cute story about the greenhouse. When Monet was having a new heater installed in the greenhouse, and Monet says to Alice he's going to sleep in the greenhouse all night to make sure that the heater worked right and didn't hurt his plants. His greenhouse was really his winter garden. He had many, many lovely plants in it, orchids and tree ferns and lovely things, and he didn't want them ruined. Alice says, well, if you're going to sleep there, I'm going to sleep there too. And the girls in the family heard about it, and they were horrified that their parents were going to have to sleep outdoors. Well, the whole family spent the night in the greenhouse, but indeed, the heater did work and the plants were safe. Monet was very involved with his garden even when he was on painting trips, which was often in the winter. I read a letter that he had written to his head gardener, and this letter was amazing. It went on and on and on, telling the head gardener what to do. But when spring came, Monet had to be home. Alice wrote at one point, "Come February, spring will be here with its early flowers, and Monet will refuse to budge." So Monet would be seen in his garden, pushing around his wheelbarrow filled with either canvases or plants.